All right, biology, welcome back to organelles, the second part of our little session, part B. I think it's labeled in your Schoology. You'll want to take notes on this video and then, of course, use those notes to take a quiz beneath it and any other things you may need to do in this unit. So anyway, we left off last time talking about a few organelles, and now we'll just jump in with the rest of them. Now, remember, these are plants and animals unless specified, okay? Vacuoles are little storage sacs, okay? They're little areas that store up something inside a cell. A lot of times it's water, sometimes it's food molecules like carbs or proteins, inorganic ions and enzymes that are going to be used and released within the cell. Think of it kind of like a storage bin. You may put something in your house in this big bin because you're going to use it. Maybe Christmas decorations you're going to bring out close to Christmas time. But other times you just kind of want it stored away. You don't use it daily, every moment. That's what vacuoles are. Okay, vacuoles are these storage units. Remember, vesicles are little units that are used to move and transport items around the cell or in and out of the cell. Vacuoles are a storage place. Okay. Now, the vacuoles that we see in plant and animal cells are very different. In animal cells, they're typically very small. They mainly store things like food. In plant cells, there's a large central vacuole, as it's called. I know you got an assignment later on about a website comparing kind of these two plant and animal cells. And you'll notice right away the central vacuole of a plant is enormous. And that's because it holds a lot of water. This is one reason why plants don't just shrivel up and die if they go without water in a day. Even, plants that are dependent on water, typical plants, trees, bushes, grasses, things like that, can go several days or weeks sometimes without water. Is because of the central vacuoles. It's a storage unit for when they need the water, they're able to pull it out. Okay, it's almost like fat tissue in humans, right? It's energy being held that when we need it, we can go to it and it'll pull that energy out. In this case, the vacuole, the central vacuole of plants is backup water. Think of it like that. But both of them have it. Okay, both of them have it. The plant one just looks way larger. Well, here's me telling you more about that. The central vacuole takes up most of space in a plant cell. It is by and large the largest thing, and you can see that in these diagrams here too. And it's filled with water, and it also gives structure and strength and support to the cell as well. That if that vacuole starts to shrink, this is what causes the shriveling up of plants. Even on a cellular level, they're starting to shrivel up and get smaller because that vacuole, the water is getting pulled out of it. All right, speaking of plants, chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are these little green, they almost look like little green beans. Not like a green bean like you eat, but a little bean-shaped thing that's green. It carries out photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is one of the things we're going to really talk about in our next unit. It is the process by which plants convert sunlight into energy, into energy. These little chloroplasts, they're highly compartmentalized, meaning that everything that it really does takes place in there or right around the chloroplast. They're individual little unit. You can see all the different parts labeled here that we're going to learn even more about. There's an outer membrane, an inner membrane, and we'll learn about that coming up. Chloroplasts contain these things called thylakoids. These thylakoids, they're these dish-shaped sacs. I almost think about them like a stack of coins. Okay, if you stack some coins up, that's really what they look like, much, much, much smaller though. And these thylakoids contain a molecule called chlorophyll. Okay, chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is a huge part of photosynthesis. All right, we'll see more about that. Now, you might have noticed on this screen, oh, it's green. Okay, that's cool. You might see it even more here that, oh, even the thylakoids are green. Yes, because this chlorophyll is what gives plants its green color. It actually absorbs green. That's the reason it doesn't reflect it out. Or it absorbs red and blue and it reflects green. And that's why we see plants as green, most plants as green. And you can see there, a lot of people have put thought and think that chloroplasts are much like the mitochondria that we studied in the last set of notes. That at one point maybe it was a free-living prokaryote, meaning its own little living organism, because it also contains its own ribosomes and it's all chloroplastic DNA. So the DNA here are a little different as well. We see it in plants, so a lot of times it gets a little unnoticed, less publicity than the mitochondria. Biggest thing about chloroplast, they are used for photosynthesis. Okay, like that's chloroplast carries out photosynthesis. We're going to learn all about the chloroplast in Unit 3. But for now, chlorophyll is a molecule in it that gives plants green color, and it's a light-absorbing molecule that's important for photosynthesis. Lysosomes, they have a nickname called suicide sacs. It's kind of interesting what lysosomes do. It is a membrane that contains a bunch of enzymes, okay? And these enzymes that we'll kind of learn about, we learn a lot more about it in anatomy too, always get things to do something else. It makes things do a certain job. And here the enzymes are actually used to break down parts of the cell. Sometimes that could be an invading bacteria or a virus. Sorry, y'all, had a technical difficulty. If there's a bacteria or a virus that comes in, these lysosomes can go attack that. They can actually surround it, or they get close to it, and they release these enzymes that will break it down. Also, where it gets this name suicide sacs is that it breaks down damaged or worn out cell parts. So when parts of the cell are malfunctioning or they're not working like they're supposed to, these lysosomes will fuse together with that part of the cell and release the enzymes, and it kills it. It eats it up. It dissolves that certain part. So that's why lysosomes gets this name suicide sacs. Now, if the cell itself is starting to be damaged, if its DNA has been corrupted, which a lot of times that's what cancers start out with, is DNA is getting corrupted. Lysosomes tries its best to kill the entire cell. So it's coming within the cell. From already in the cell, it branches out and starts trying to attack the cell to kill it before it can multiply. We're going to learn more about cell division later on, how cells make more copies of themselves. But the lysosome tries its best. And sometimes when cancer gets out of hand and starts spreading and growing, it's because the lysosomes can't do their job quicker than the cell's making more copies of itself. So it's an interesting characteristic about these organelles that's kind of unique, that it's there to not only defend the cell from invaders, but also kill the cell if it needs to. Centrosomes and centrioles, these are going to be very important when we talk about mitosis, which is cell division, how cells separate and make more copies of itself. One cell becomes two, two becomes four. We'll get there, okay? Just kind of keep it in mind now. These centrioles are going to be important. It's a small region of cytoplasm that produces microtubules, all right? So these centrioles that come from here, they will branch out and they'll start sticking to different parts of the cell. Okay, and we'll see how this sticks to different parts of the cell and then start stretching the cell apart into two different sides. Like I said, it helps in cell division in animal cells. Just like in chloroplast, I said, hey, no, this has to do with something called photosynthesis. Know that centrioles have to do with mitosis. Okay, you don't see it in the notes, so I promise it's not going to be on any of your work. Just know cell division. These are very helpful in there with animal cells. Another thing that centrosomes and centrioles can do. In certain types of cells, it can form cilia and flagella. And these cilia are actually these little hair-like objects sticking all out around here, and the flagella is like a long whip-like tail. A lot of simple cells that are eukaryotic have these movement-type devices, right? So it enables them to move around or to latch on to food sources or different objects like that. So just know, cilia and flagella, they're kind of cool when you really start studying them. Sadly, we won't get too much into them. Check out all these tubules that it does. Anyway, it's interesting. If you really like microbiology, cilia and flagella are things that you want to look at. All right, and then we got the cell walls. The cell walls, this is found only in plants, algae, fungi, and most bacteria. Notice what's missing from that list. Animals. Animal cells, like the ones that make up me and you, do not have cell walls. They do not. Okay, this cell wall is a strong, rigid layer that goes even around the cell membrane, right? The cell wall is the outermost structure here around this plant cell, obviously. On the inside here is the cell membrane, okay? So the cell wall surrounds it, and it really gives this rigidity, protection, support, and shape to the cells. And these cell walls, they vary depending on what type of organism it is. In plants, you might have heard of something called cellulose, and that's what really makes up the cell wall, and it is very rigid. It's not like a brick or anything like that, but very, very tightly woven. And you can see these other things, fungi and bacteria, theirs is a little more free-flowing with that. Okay, so that's the biggest things I wanted you to see in these organelles. Coming up, we're really going to talk about another organelle called the cell membrane. But we're going to leave that for the next set of notes. Please use these notes to help yourself do well in the quizzes. As always, I want you to use your notes on everything but the big exam, right? So take time and go through your notes. And if you need anything, as always, email me, jhicks@randolphboe.org.